Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. There was a devblog that came out yesterday, but it came out pretty late, so I thought we would talk about it today, and it is the ray tracing in War Thunder. This update has a ridiculous amount of graphical updates, and kind of the spearhead of these is ray tracing. Now, ray tracing, they've actually gone through it here, and how it's going to work, and how everything's going to go through. But the main things that I want to make sure that people know right now is ray tracing itself is going to come in a few forms in War Thunder, and you can toggle on which part of it that you want, and also it is quite CPU intensive and also GPU intensive. After talking to a few people who were running it on the dev server, I personally didn't, because when it comes to new graphical stuff, if I'm doing the content that I do on the dev server, I don't want things to break, because stuff breaks anyway, and I don't need more stuff breaking. But when it comes to the live server and ray tracing coming out, you're going to need a pretty good rig. Now, for me, I have a 3070, I have a pretty high-end i7. We'll see how it goes, but I feel like I'm probably not going to be able to do all of this stuff. I might need to upgrade the PC in order to do it. So, let's go through the ray tracing in War Thunder, the amount of effort that the developers have been putting into it, which, to be honest, is amazing. The fact that they have gone as hard as they have, which is started off here, where they talk about how ray tracing works. Basically, the way it works is you have to create a model in the game where the light can go and also where the effects can come from. And it is called the bounding volume hierarchy, as you can see here. Basically, it's a triangulated representation of the whole world where all the RT effects can work on that. So a lot of games will specifically target certain areas of their games or certain models of their game, which kind of have that increased fidelity and also BVH, and that's where the ray tracing comes in. When it comes to War Thunder, they've decided that everything should have access to the effects. So everything in the game will have this. So they've basically had to map the whole game again for BVH, which is just insane to think about. So imagine the game has like several different layers on it, and this is one of them where they've had to remap it all for that. And that's obviously not just the hangar, which they show here, it's also every part of it. So every vehicle, every, landscape, every map, everything. And so by doing this, this opens them up to being able to expand on it in the future, and also making it so they can add as many effects as possible. And that's basically what they've done with this. So the amount of effort that has gone into this from a developer point of view is nuts. And then also on top of this, which is crazy as well, is the fact that it's all coming in for free. There is no paid part of this. There's nothing. It is all coming in for everybody. The only limitation is going to be if your rig is strong enough, and that may be quite a heavy limitation. We'll have to see what goes on. So, as it says, doing this has a price with the BVH building process. Makes use of as many CPU threads as possible, so a modern CPU is recommended. So you don't just need a good CPU, a good GPU, you also need a good CPU. So this is the basic map that they've created. And then also they show some interesting effects and how they set up. This side is ray trace, this side is not. So the first one is the ray trace shadow map. So this is pretty simple. The way that a lot of gaming shadows work is they come from a single point, and basically they just beam straight down. So therefore things can look kind of jaggy, can look kind of weird, and also can look as if they are very still and stationary. Whereas with ray tracing, the idea is you actually model a bunch of different points in the idea of a sun, and then it points down. Therefore, it actually creates a physically correct penumbra, which is really cool, if I'm honest. And I also thought that was what the global illumination thing did with Gaijin, because that's what they talked about before, modeling, lands, modeling Earth's, even solar systems and things like that. But this is what it looks like now, and then you can see here it is slightly different, and they've added shadows to every little thing. So it isn't just the fact that you have this shadow here. you also had the shadows which are appearing over here, and over here. Now, I've had a few issues with shadows in terms of the game for a while, just because of the fact that with these types of shadows, what ends up happening is they kind of look a bit janky with the refresh rate, but I'm hoping with ray tracing this isn't as much of an issue going around. Now, the next one is you have another option that you can bring in. So this is more like, let's call them like stationary shadows. So ones which turn up when, you kind of load into the game, because, the position of the sun is going to change during the match, but not a huge amount. So even though they're technically changing, most of them are not going to change that much. These are dynamic light effects that are going to change while you are doing actions in the game. So whether it's explosions, muzzle flashes moving around, things like this. So this is the one which is an incredibly demanding thing because it has to load it as it's happening. So you can see here, this is what it looks like now. And then with ray tracing, you can see that on the vehicle itself, with all of the like smoke and clouds and everything, it is trying to create the shimmer around that effect. And then also the explosion here has caused a shadow from this set of tables on it. So you can see how you have the shadow of the house which is pushing this way, and now you have a shadow which is pushing from this light source here. So that's what it's basically creating. You can see here on the tree and also over here. So that has to be all rendered in real time, and it's obviously going to be very heavy on the GPU, but it looks amazing. And also when it comes to these types of things, usually what happens is over time they get a little bit less GPU intensive just because it becomes better in terms of setting it up, but at the moment you're going to need a pretty heavy card. So ray traced ambient occlusion, this is the next part. So this was the first part, the ray trace shadow map. So you have the standard one, and then you have the one that is more heavy. Then ambient occlusion is a technique used to simulate object features blocking the ambient lighting like the sky itself. So the example they gave is why it's darker under your bed. So if you have like a platform, like a deck or something, that's why there's no light under it, because there is a physical platform in the way. So here, the way that they're kind of showing it is if you have a look at the roof, where it's actually making these areas a bit more darker because of the fact that you have like the metal in there and everything like this. This is the new abandoned factory map, which is probably why they're showcasing it. But it basically just means that light will be blocked more by stuff above it, which is kind of cool. Now, this, I believe, already is kind of in the game, but basically they talk about it just being better in terms of how it works. So there you go. Simple as that. It's going to be better than the SSAO. It's going to be better than the global illumination stuff. Just generally better. Now, this one is nuts. So this one is crazy, and it may actually have some pretty heavy gameplay implications, which could give a massive advantage to people who have really good graphics cards, but only in like certain areas. So ray traced reflection. So this is a crazy feature, and basically what it does is it makes reflections way more, or increases the fidelity of them by a ridiculous amount. So you can see here, again, even before RTR we had reflections, which is true. Probe-based and screen space reflections were used, but just as with SSAO, they had their limitations, actually very similar. Handling out of screen or occluded objects for screen space and positioning issues with probes, RTR has the whole scene to trace, so naturally it can reflect objects from any location. There is another complication for RTR, namely surface roughness. A rough surface like concrete has reflections which are very soft and blurry, while gloss surfaces like glass or flat water have mirrors like sharp reflections. So basically it takes into account how soft something is and how much of an aggressive reflection it should give it. And also, additionally, there's everything in between. Simulating this is actually one of the hottest topics in computer graphics, which isn't surprising, right? So our approach is rendering noisy reflections based on roughness and using a so-called denoiser to get physically accurate reflections. So making everything kind of blurry and then making it sharp so certain areas are sharper. So this is what it looks like right now. You can see that it's kind of blurry down here, right? This is what it looks like without ray tracing. With ray tracing, it is just insane, the difference. Like the amount of, once again, fidelity that you get from this. And also you can see the stick itself has its own shadow modeled, where previously it did not, and therefore just created a hole in the reflection. Now it's all modeled. That's nuts. That's crazy. That's absolutely insane. And then this is where it gets a little bit even more nuts. So this is what it looks like now, in terms of this building on Sun City. But what they're going to be doing is they're going to make it so images that are rendered as a mirror are way more correct compared to what they were before. So basically, you can see here where the light is glowing onto the actual building itself and it's reflecting off, and therefore you can see what is inside. So this means that you'll be able to see around corners probably and also see around the place in general. How insane is that? Where this, like, the light doesn't go into it and it just kind of, you know, doesn't exist. Whereas with this, it reflects off. This is nuts and amazing, may I just say. And I'm glad that they actually show this off, because you can see here, this is what the reflections look like. So they're really, really cool. Whereas before, they just wasn't really any reflections. There are reflections in the game at the moment, but nothing compared to this. This adds so much, not just to the game, but also to stuff like cinematics, and also the way that people want to set up. It is amazing to look at. So this is really cool. But as I said, could also be quite game breaking, especially with, you know, people abusing stuff like that. Also, water reflections, we're using a planar reflections in the game, which are a very accurate way to have reflections, and then it's distorted based on the waves. So with RTR water, the reflection rays are shot out correctly based on the wave normal vectors. The reflection itself is more correct, as it's not just distorting a 2D image, but actually use different reflections per pixel. So this is what it looks like now, and then this is what it looks like with the ray tracing. So you can see the difference, not just between what the bottom of the destroyer looks like, but also you can see what it looks like on the two islands, right? There's just way more kind of, I suppose, just improved, once again, fidelity. It just looks nicer. Naval is one of those game modes that is pretty resource intensive, so I'm not sure how that's going to work, but we'll see how it goes. Now, they talk about it here, about what they're going to do with ray tracing. So it isn't going to be a simple on and off button. What they're going to do is they're going to give you access to all of these different tools and all the three options that we looked at, and you can enable them or disable them independently. So if you only want one of them on, you can have one of them. If you don't want all of them on, you don't have to, and you can turn all of them off too. And the reason for this is because ray tracing is incredibly resource intensive for your machine. So for me, I don't know with my current machine if I'm going to be able to do this, or even like part of it. I'm going to give it a go, but I don't obviously want to set my graphics card on fire. So that's something to think about. Now, maybe next year when, you know, GPUs can get themselves a little bit cheaper, because the 4000 series around me, or at least the ones that I would like, are still over $1,000. It would be nice to actually take advantage of these things. I'm sure you guys would want to see these, at least through what I'm doing. But generally, this is beautiful. It really is beautiful. There's no other way of putting it. And I was thinking the other day about some old War Thunder videos that I did, and also old War Thunder videos other people did, and I remember people talking about how they really missed the way that old War Thunder looked. And it's like, everything is either dark green or brown, and everything looks like sludge. Because that's what games had to do back in the day to make it so they could fit so much stuff in. And nowadays, you look at War Thunder, and it is absolutely stunning. It is insanely stunning. It's crazy to think about. They've done an amazing job. Like, there's no other way of putting it. And once again, as I said, all of this is available to everybody. There's no price tag, there's no nothing. This is available from the moment that you start the game. The only limitation is, of course, hardware, and that is always going to be a limitation in terms of graphics and how they're all set up. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.